Hello from Huntington Beach. Today I wanted to talk a little bit about something that happened just about a week ago. I'm a commercial photographer, and in that line of work, I tend to use AI a bit, primarily to clean some things up in photos, maybe straighten them, basic basic things. We don't really do like, making whole pictures. It's we take our pictures, and with Photoshop now, there's so much you can do that instead of having the, stamp items out or whatever, you can have it do it automatically. So we're kind of familiar with that. We have done a little bit of editing, and I mean it's my wife and I. She does a lot of editing. So it's been something we've been playing with and are kind of familiar with. But I've never used it in my own personal work because I shoot analog for my personal work. And you kind of think, well, you're shooting analog, and it's something that you shoot analog. You don't necessarily think, well, I should use AI for that. But I decided on this image to give it a shot and to see what it would look like. I started editing this image here on my own. This came out of the camera. This is the way it came out. It was shot with my Leica 3F 1950s camera with Kodak Gold 200, and here's the final image. So I started editing this in Photoshop. The story behind this image, let me pull it up for you so you can see it a little better. The story behind the image is I was walking from one side to the other of this underpass here, which is actually the Huntington Beach Pier. So people are walking on the top side. And I was walking underneath, and I hadn't planned on stopping at all when I saw those people down at the end. And I thought, I'm going to, take a stop, line that up. That's going to be kind of interesting. Well, they were walking towards the ocean, and I didn't have a lot of time. But then out of the corner of my eye, I saw this biker, and I thought, well, he would be great if I saw him coming into the frame. So what I decided to do next was to then quickly just lower the shutter speed, take a guess at exposure, quickly set up. I only had maybe a few seconds, get it as close to in line as possible, and click the shutter and hope. And that was the picture that came out. And I'm actually quite happy with that. It's, not squared up, but that really wasn't in the time frame that I had, that was okay. So yeah, pretty happy overall with the way the picture came out. It's exposed about where I thought it was going to be. The biker is blurred, which is what I wanted. Overall, not bad. I actually got, everything kind of in focus the way I wanted, so I was happy. My first step was manually to go ahead and turn it to black and white, which was the way I'd seen this image in my head, was as a black and white. So I started here, I kind of got to that, and I was like, this isn't far enough. So then I pushed it a little bit farther, starting to bring up the graphic elements, starting to lighten it up a bit. I still wasn't exactly happy, and I was going to push it farther. And that's when I thought, we've been playing with AI. Let's see what AI would do. So I fed it into Firefly, Adobe's version of AI, and I sent them this original picture and the last black and white that I was working on, which was this one. I said, let's go a little farther. Let's take this. I want to make the whites whiter. I don't care if you blow the highlights out entirely. And I want more detail, so a little more contrast in the columns. What AI came up with was this, which was very close to my vision, and it did it in a second. And that was really very close. Now this is really the second iteration of AI. The first one, I didn't think they pulled it far enough yet. I was going to go one more step, and so I said, let's go a little farther. So this is actually 2 generations in AI to get it to this phase. And I thought, yeah, that was my vision for how this should be. Then I said, I would normally straighten it out and fix the geometry a bit, because I was interested to see how AI would do it compared to how I did it. I went ahead, and this is how I would have straightened my image. You can see off to the right of the image, I straightened up over here. And so everything is straight to this side. This is not quite straight in my image. And you can see I don't mind the little bit of keystoning because the camera's obviously turned up just a little bit. So that was fine. So, everything looks pretty good after I straightened it. Here's what AI did, and something I probably would have thought about eventually, but I didn't really like these people in this corner over here. To me, they were distracting. I was probably going to crop the image, was my thoughts on it. Well, what AI did was, when I told it to fix the geometry, was straightened out the left side of the image, kept the right side keystoning. It brought the biker a little bit more into the frame, you can see. And it gets rid of the people automatically for me at that point. And I thought, yeah, that's exactly, where I would have gotten eventually. That whole thing in AI took under 10 minutes, where me just fooling with the first parts, which I weren't happy with, I have at least half an hour into. So that started me thinking over the next couple of days, is this proper? Is this something that you should even be thinking about? And I started thinking back to the days of prior to Photoshop, when you did most of your work in a darkroom. But there were a lot of us who didn't have time necessarily to really be in a darkroom all the time, or we didn't have a space. So we would tell our lab technician what we wanted, and he would go in and he would fool with things, and sometimes you'd have to go back and forth, and finally you got what you wanted, or maybe you settled for whatever his vision was. I always thought of that as much more of a collaborative kind of setting, where he's got an idea of what you want, you kind of voiced it, but then he is also limited by his ability of what he can do in the darkroom, how much you want to pay. So how long is he going to fool with this image? All those things come into play. Eventually, you go, I am only partial owner of this image, and the darkroom guy is the other image. Now, we don't really look at it that way. If you look at Ansel Adams' work, nobody says who did the darkroom work. A lot of images we look at that we attribute to certain photographers are really also a product of the darkroom. In today's world, that would be the Photoshop world. And we, again, don't really attribute a lot of the work that we do to somebody who does the Photoshop work if we don't do it ourselves. So, what's the difference between now saying, let's have AI do it, and let me or the darkroom guy or somebody else do it? In some ways, AI actually is more of my vision than what it was to turn it over to somebody else to do the work. With AI, I don't have to necessarily collaborate. It is entirely me. However, they do recommend, or they do things a little different. So I almost get that collaborative workflow without actually talking to anybody. It just sends me back an image, and I say, is this what I want or not? And I can fool with it. The question is does it make sense for us to start using AI, not to totally revamp our images, not to add elements, not to do things that we can't do in Photoshop, but to make it so we spend less time sitting here at these computers and more time out doing what we like to do, which in my case is the shooting part. Now, ultimately, I guess you could say no, but then why aren't you in the darkroom? When we then take pictures of people and we do a slight little retouch, why aren't you doing that on the negative to retouch it and then print it? I mean, we can go back to a time, where we had no automation, no Photoshop, no anything, and say that's pure. But was it really? I mean, when we look back in time, we see from early on in photography, people were doing manipulations. And does AI really a step too far or not? And I don't know the answer to that. I am still struggling. I like the speed because I have the image. However, it does seem a little bit weird and off. So I'd really like to hear what you think. Please leave a message in the comments. If you see this video, I really, really, really appreciate it. And I will see you next time. Thanks so much.